that works so well with art, right? I mean, you look at something and say, God, it would be more interesting if I flipped this upside down and turned it inside out. So that's always been, I've always looked at a concept, people will come to me and say, well, you know, I got this great story and here's the plot points, and they lay it out for me. And I'll come back to them and I'll say, you know, I think the whole thing would be better if he was gay. You know, or I think the whole thing would be better if, you know, that character was black. You know, and whatever it might be, you flip the whole paradigm that they created on its head, and it's more interesting.
Can you see how what his life experience made it interesting? Because his father told him to do the opposite, you know. And I find that very interesting that this RSVP, you really learn something from this. Let's go to Erica. What are your resources? What do you think you draw from?
Creatively, I began my creative life as a dancer. So that's where I always start. As a dancer, you have to learn the technique, you have to learn the steps, you execute the steps, and then you perform it as if it's effortless. So I use that in my creative journey, as well as being, I'm an overachiever. I've always been that. And so, even when I was little, I've always been.
Give us an example of that. You were little.
So when I was little, I attended kindergarten and preschool at the same time. I'm sorry, Z. Yeah, whatever. And so I always was the kid that got all A's, and when I was in the 3rd grade, I read on the 12th grade level. And so I've always been an overachiever, always wanted things larger and bigger. So I approached my creative journey with that, using that all the time. And so now, no matter what I'm doing, whether it's location management or I'm teaching a school or I'm working on a project, whatever it is, I approach it the same way. I learn the techniques, I try to get it down, and ended up getting it done at the end of the day, making it look like I didn't have to do much to get it done.
Was there anybody in your life that was an overachiever that helped to influence that, or was it just uniquely you?
That's a good question. I think it was uniquely me. Well, I think it was born out of seeing my parents, my mother and my grandmother, they made it happen for me and my sister and I. So I've seen them do that. That was just, it was instilled in us non-verbally. It was kind of unconscious. It was something that we knew that we had to do.
Sounds like they gave you a lot of confidence.
They did. And so I take that with me in my creative journey.
Let's go to Oren.
I guess I'd have to start with when I got into making video, which was in high school, and I think largely because I failed to be able to play any music or draw or write well. And video was this new and accessible medium that I latched onto to be expressive. And in high school, that came from many dark, weird things that I don't really want to go into.
Would you say
films weren't that good.
I'm just trying to stick with reason. Would you say the dark is something that you draw from, or it just happens to you?
I think that was just high school, because I no longer make films that are dark like that anymore. And going back and reviewing, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And, yeah, and that was, but now I try and separate the work I do into projects that are strictly coming from emotional needs that I'm having, either heartbreak or confusion or whatever, and then films that I want to direct my life in a certain way. The first feature I made was a film about public education in Detroit public schools, and if I said like I just cared about education and the state of public education, I would be only telling half the truth. That was definitely there, but I was interested in returning to a city that my family was from, going to the same schools that my family had gone to, and deeply interacting with a city that was always really close to me, but I never experienced.
Would you say your family is a resource?
financially.
Try to figure out, try to distill what you're telling me into what a resource.
Yeah, no, I mean, so a resource is strong emotional reactions and desire to be involved in a process that is larger than myself and larger than films. I wouldn't be happy just making a film if at the end of the day I had a great film, because we spend so much time on process and making that film that if it wasn't the journey that I was looking for, then I wouldn't care very much about the film. And I think to just expand on that, I guess a resource for me would be Sans Soleil, which is a film by Chris Marker. It's a travelogue, and it's a film about memory, and it makes the film much more than a film, because it's not about memory, it like is memory. And I've always been fascinated with films, well, the possibility of film to be something larger than a movie, to be either something that could change someone's or a group's ideological reasoning, something that could affect a community and empower them in a way, something that takes me on a specific journey or other people. The last film I just made is called The Bicyclist, and I didn't really know what the purpose of that film was until I went through it and went through a mental trauma with the main actor and writer. He obviously needed it, and I obviously needed to be caring for someone.
So I'm just we're getting into score there a little bit. So it's important for you to communicate. You want to have an interaction with your audience. Is that something that's important?
No, because I think then I would publicize myself a little better and try and get more screenings. I work a lot in documentary. I really like more the interaction I have with people in making the film, because that's guaranteed whether or not people are going to see my movies. That's not what I'm good at, is getting people to see my movies, or what I want to spend my time doing. I'd rather be working on documentary and meeting people, working with other creative people in the production, post-production, pre-production.
When you were little, did you do interaction projects? If there were things that interested you creatively? Did you when you were like a little boy?
When I was a little boy, so video has really been a substitute for athletics. Athletics to me is one of the greatest things there possibly is. I don't know how familiar people in here are with Matthew Barney and some of his work about about using your physical body in your artwork, and that's why I got involved in camera work, those were mostly my interactions growing up, was a physical, like, let's ram heads, this is something I need on a daily basis.
I see that as a big resource. Physical activity, it sounds like you use that a lot when you're doing your creativity, because you're interacting with your team, you're way physical with your team.
But I'll also say the frustration of not having that team and not having that physical interaction leads to more subject matter, is more inspiring to my films, or influence my films more than it's a lack. I think films come out of a lack a lot of the time, and for me are very cathartic.
Yeah. Well, they both go hand in hand in many ways. That's very interesting. Let's go to Lance. Yes. Resources you draw from.
Because I write screenplays for feature film and I direct feature film, it's a multifaceted answer. For writing specifically, I think I draw from Shakespeare, because Shakespeare to me, the English language expressed through Shakespeare is the most specific language we have. And he wrote about drama, he wrote about betrayal,